Right, excellent. So this is part one of this year's BGA Flight Radio Telephony Operators License course. This year being run by myself and Chula Rupasina, who's the other handsome fellow on the screen.
Or waving if the description didn't work.
So we've been doing this for a while. I think this is the fifth year we've run the course, and it was a result of a project designed with really two aims. The first and perhaps the most important is to make glider pilots better at using the radio. So we wanted to teach glider pilots what they should do rather than power pilots. And actually, although there isn't huge amounts of difference, and we have a few power pilots on the course at the moment, and it'll be fine, guys. It's just reducing a bit of a barrier to entry for glider pilots. And then we wanted to provide a comprehensive course because, unlike if you learn to fly a powered airplane, radio isn't an integral part of training. I mean, typically the most that happens in a gliding club is you call downwind or something like that, or a couple of calls to the tugs. Doesn't get you very far. And additionally, we wanted to reduce the barriers for glider pilots getting a license, the radio license, or FRTOL, as we pronounce this, to make it easy. So that was the more appropriate, to make it a more appropriate test, a test based on a glider flight rather than a powered flight, and to try and reduce the cost. So those were our objectives. Here's who we are. I have the misfortune to be CFI at Cambridge at the moment. I'm a full CAT and a regional examiner, and I've got a PPL and still just an instrument rating. So I'm reasonably broad experience with sort of 3,500 hours or something of flying of various sorts. And then Chula, down at London Gliding Club, has been an RT examiner, is a full CAT, has been a powered airplane instructor as well. I should put an advert in at this point, which is there's definitely space for extra help to run this course. And probably there are two sets of skills we need. And actually the most important is IT literacy, because as you'll see, we've got probably, there's 160 people registered for this Zoom call. We won't have them all tonight, but we've got 160. And actually managing that number of people is essentially an IT literacy problem rather than an RT literacy problem. So if there's anybody who fancies volunteering for next year, that would be much appreciated. For this session, we're going to talk a little bit about how we use Zoom. That was important 5 years ago. It's much less important now because, strangely, with lockdown and such like, most people can use it. But we'll just mention a few things briefly. What we're going to do every week is reinforce some of the key messages that we've given you in the material that you should already have looked at on the website. This is not the place we do the teaching. The teaching is primarily you watching the videos, reading the things that we link to on the website. What this is about is just reinforcing some of the key messages, picking up some questions that you might have. And then, and this is the really powerful bit, practicing in small groups in breakouts. And we have with us a whole bunch of coaches who've given up their time to help you. You can give us feedback either during the session via the chat channel on Zoom, and you need to address those questions to Chula. You only have two choices, me or Chula. I won't be reading the chat channel whilst I'm talking, so there's no point sending them to me. Send them to Chula. Or you can send an email after the session. The normally email address will work fine there. So here's our agenda, using the Zoom, current situation of the course, current situation of the test, what the coaches are going to do, and the feedback. So very quickly on Zoom, hopefully everybody's used it. This is what it looks like, I think, on APC. At the top right here, we've got gallery and speaker view, so you can switch between them. You can mute yourself and mute the video down on the bottom left. You can look at who's participating here and change your name in that dialogue. Here's the chat box. We don't use this reactions thing very much, so fairly straightforward. Okay, a few tips. Leave your microphones muted. Just unmute them if asked to speak. There's a lot of people. We can't have. It's tricky if everybody starts jumping in. It doesn't happen. So communicate with us via chat and feel free to ask questions as we go. Use the speaker view probably for the main sessions, so you get a picture of me talking rather than a big grid of people. But when you're 5 or 6 people in a breakout, it might be better to use the gallery view. And we are recording the session. We do put the recording up on the website for people who've missed it. I generally chop out the stuff at the beginning and the stuff at the end. So it's in this case, it'll be the formal stuff and any question and answer that we have before you go into breakouts. The breakouts, the bits where you're talking, aren't recorded. So breakout rooms, you might not have done this in Zoom. Chula will be setting up the rooms, and when we start them, you'll get an invitation to join a room. So click join. If you can, make a note of which group you're in, which breakout room you're in, because if you, for some reason, fall out of that breakout room, and if your connection drops, that will happen. You'll come back up to the top level. Imagine I'll be sitting at the top level, managing things, and then underneath me, there's a whole bunch of breakout rooms. If you appear back at the top level, you'll have to tell me which breakout room you were in order for me to put you in there. I can't tell. And I don't have a list. When you're in the breakout group, you can ask for help. There's a symbol for that, and you can ask me to join you. I can drop in and see what's happening, or you can pop back up to the top and ask me there. So just by pressing leave breakout room. We probably won't close the breakout rooms, but if we do, you'll get a 1-minute warning to give you some time to just wrap up. So the online BGA FRTOL course was originally developed with support from an outfit called Airspace for All, actually funded by the airlines. And that gave us the material, which was actually the slides that the lectures are based on, the video lectures. And we took it from there and created the lectures, and then decided that it would be a good idea to run an online course, and the rest is history, as they say. So you could do it just by watching the videos and reading the material and go off and do the test. Possible. Tricky though, because the practice is really important. So we provide that online support. There'll be 6 sessions, and don't get confused by the fact that when you registered for Zoom, it told you about 8. That's a consequence of wanting to have only one link for a weekly course. I didn't, maybe possible, but I didn't see a way of taking out 2 sessions in the middle. So Zoom sent you an email saying there'll be 8 sessions. There aren't. There are 6, 3 before Christmas and 3 afterwards. The dates are on the website if you don't already have them. After that, we do some small group coaching, which I think I'm going to talk about a little bit later. There's about 120 people signed up for the course, and something like 40 volunteers to coach. Not all of whom will be here for any one week. So we've got a reasonable coach to student ratio, I hope. We'll see what this one works out like. You are going to need to do work outside these sessions. It's just not enough to come along to these sessions. There's the pre-reading, which are the basics and the theoretical knowledge for the rest of the course. There's quite a lot of stuff in that. There's a video lecture for each part, and that takes you through the RT we're teaching that week and tells you a bit about the theoretical knowledge you're going to need. And then we have a set of scripts for breakouts and practice, which are really for you to improvise around. And then we have a thing called script rehearsal, which I'll come to in a moment. So the website is really where everything goes. And we've got, this is the intro page, and there are the dates of the course in the middle. Excuse me. And then there's 4 sections which are relevant to you now. The course materials, which is where all the content that we've created and some that we've found exists. The Zoom recording section is where I'll put the recording of this session and subsequent sessions. So if you miss one, you can go back, or if you want to remind yourself what was said, you can look on there. Then there's a background theory section, which is quite useful. And then we've got a frequently asked questions. Now, at the moment, the frequently asked questions is populated with the last couple of years. I think I'm going to break all those out and start afresh with things that come from people on this course. So you can go and see what people have asked, and you'll be able to go and see what people have asked and see what the answers are. And I'll put a link to all the rest of the stuff that's already there rather than lose it. We found a very useful little app called Script Rehearsal, and it's designed for actors to learn their lines. And for the scripts we're using each week, or most of the weeks, and for some of the practice routes for people who want to take the test, we've created not only a PDF which has what that route would look like in terms of the RT, but also a script rehearsal app. Now, this works very much best on a phone or a tablet, either an iPhone or an Android phone or tablet. There are some instructions on the website that one of the previous students created about how to get it working on a PC. I get the impression that you've got to be quite technically savvy to make that work. I haven't tried myself, but I know at least one person who's on the call tonight has succeeded in that. And if he tells me how he did it, I'll put that up on the website. Something to pay a little bit of attention to, which I've discovered since the last year we did this, is they've put the facility in to change the speed at which people talk. So when you start this, you find one character the glider character is gabbling, but ATC is speaking with a very slow drawl. You need to go and change the speed. It's a slider on the characters setting in the thing. Although we have put exactly what we might say in this circumstance, we don't quite want you to go and learn those exact words. We want you to learn the structure of the messages and be able to put your own examples of words in, by which I mean we want you to think about the structure and know what words you need to insert and come up with this same thing. But we'll come more to that. I have put new versions of the scripts on the website today, cleaning up some stuff that we noticed in previous years. So if you've downloaded the script before today, you might want to go back and pick up the latest versions. Let me know about any errors you find, any things we need to correct, and we'll sort that out at some point. And that's a general request. Anything you think is wrong, please let us know. We try and make it pretty accurate. Okay. Let me tell you about the FRTOL test. You don't have to do the FRTOL test. As I said, our primary objective is to make glider pilots better at using the radio. Some of you will already have a FRTOL, and we have people come back and practice on this course. That's fine too. But those of you that want to do the FRTOL, the CAA rolled out a new test over the past couple of years, and I suspect they've finished rolling it out now, but I'm not sure. Chris Merrick can probably help us with that later. The test can be based around a glider or a helicopter or a power GA, general aviation flight. The examiner makes up a route, and you talk to the examiner as if you were talking on a radio. And there's also a short written test, which you may as well do at the same time as the practical test, although we expect and hope that it will at some point be subsumed into the successors of the current bronze written papers, which will be the SPL written papers, which will be more or less the same thing. But I know that Andrew Watson, who helped with this course previously, is working on trying to make sure that that covers the requirement for the FRTOL. For anybody who is impecunious and can't afford to do the test, I think we'll probably have the ability to subsidize or pay for the test for suitably qualified candidates. So if you feel you're in that position, if you're very, very young or very broke, come and ask. Coaches, who are the critical part of this course, are available to assist with learning. Most of each session is going to be coaching using those scripts that I've talked about. When the course is finished, we'll ask who wants to go do the test and do some practice, and we'll ask coaches who wants to volunteer to help them. And we'll put small groups together, generally geographically local. So we'll try and find somebody in a club and a group of people who are in the same club, or at least a local club. That's a distinction from how it works during these sessions, where we randomly allocate students to coaches, and you will get a different coach each week. So the coaches are there to help, but you have to take responsibility for your own learning. They aren't there to make you do it. They're not there to teach you. They're there to help you learn by coaching you. Okay, coaches. Most people have done this before, but we've got a few new ones. So make sure that you have an asterisk on the front of your on-screen name. So rather than Paul Ruskin, you want Star Paul Ruskin. And here's roughly how to do it. So on a PC, if you go to the participants list, you can click on your own name in the list, or there's a little three-button thing, three dots, and you can select more or rename from the list. And I think if you just click on your picture on the screen, you'll get the three dots, and you can go from there as well. Similarly on a Mac, and oh, there you go, Chris, that's how to do the iPad. Touch the main picture, touch participants, touch rename. So if you don't add a star to the front of your name as a coach, you won't end up coaching a group, because that's how, when Chula sets up the breakout groups, that's how he figures who are the coaches. He can't possibly manage a list of people and sort out the names from 100 and something.
So Paul, I'll do that in 5 minutes time. So you need
okay. Brilliant. That'll work. I'm about halfway through.
Okay.
Okay. So key messages from this week. So that was the intro. This is how the coursework stuff. Now let's have a look at what we're trying to teach this week. So first of all, a little bit of general advice. We are teaching away a language which has vocabulary and grammar. And the reason that radio looks like that is by using standard words and phrases, it's easier to understand. If, for example, we only have two possible things we're going to say on a radio, like, for example, take up slack, or all out, then the channel can be very noisy, and it's quite easy to distinguish between those two phrases. Even if you can't make the words out, you'll get it from the cadence. And RT is, in a way, quite like that, because often the radio channel that we're using is pretty noisy. So if you know what the other side is going to say, it's a lot easier to understand it. And if they're going to say it in a particular way, it's easier to understand it. So that's why there are, one of the reasons why there are a lot of rules about how to say stuff, because it's much easier to understand than if we just chat on the radio. However, there is often more than one way of saying things, and you'll discover this as we go on. We're going to be mostly giving you one way of saying things, and the test tends to be fairly prescriptive about that. The examiners are fairly prescriptive about that. But again, we're trying to teach people to use the radio well. So where people tend to say things a little differently, we'll try and tell you and discuss how you deal with it. The important thing, though, is to be understood. So when you get out in the real world, don't worry if it's not perfect. Have a good shot at it, and people will be fine. The standard of RT out there is not brilliant. Probably once you finish this course, you'll be at least as good as the rest of the people out there. So don't be afraid. The other thing I'd say is brevity is important. The radio channel we're using is usually congested. There can be a lot of people on it. So keeping what you say as short as is practical is quite an important rule. Right. Now, there's some stuff on the course you just need to know. Okay, it's just rote learning. There's nothing you can do about that. And in particular, the material in the introductory reading, which hopefully you've done. There's no easy way around it other than learning and practice. And with practice, it becomes second nature. But for the rest, there's a quote that seems to be attributed to Richard Feynman, which is, to understand, don't memorize, learn principles, not formulas. And we want you to think about the structure of what you're saying, because there is a structure to it. And if you know the structure, you can figure out what words are going to fit in there. So we'll talk in a moment about the initial message and the full message, and that'll be an important part of that sort of thing. But pretty much everything has got a structure. So here's an example from the introductory reading, the Archaeo phonetic alphabet. This one's just a basic, and you've just got to know it. You need to know how to say words using the phonetic alphabet. So let's have a little go. So I want you to look at this, and for each word, I want you to spell it out to yourself in phonetics. And I'll give you a few seconds, and then I'll see if I can do it. Okay, so the Tango, Hotel, Echo. Quick, Quebec, Uniform, India, Charlie, Kilo. Onyx, Oscar, November, Yankee, X-ray. Goblin, Golf, Oscar, Bravo, Lima, India, November. Jumps, Juliet, Uniform, Mike, Papa, Sierra. Over, Oscar, Victor, Echo, Romeo. The, we've done, but Tango, Hotel, Echo. Lazy, Lima, Alpha, Zulu, Yankee. And Dwarf, Delta, Whiskey, Alpha, Romeo, Foxtrot. So if you got those before I did, you're fine, you can move on. If you stumbled over any, it's on your list of things to learn for next week. Here's an example of where there are some rules you've just got to learn. There are certain ways of pronouncing numbers. And this set of things, call signs, airspeed, frequencies, headings, wind speeds, and directions, we pronounce each digit individually. And for frequencies, we pronounce all 6 digits unless the frequency ends in 00, in which case we omit them. So 121.5, not 121.500, but 131.280. So it's either 6 digits or 4. And then there's a set of things: altitude, flight levels, height, cloud height, so all the things to do with levels, pressure setting, runway visibility, range information, visibility, and transponder codes. And we pronounce each digit individually. But if we've got a climb to or a descend to, we have to follow it with the word altitude or height. So descend to altitude 3,000 feet. And the reason for that is that 2 otherwise can be confused with the number 2. So descend to 3,000 feet, is that descend 23,000 feet, or is it descend to 3,000 feet? So if we say descend to altitude 3,000 feet, it's clear. And whole thousands and hundreds we say. So 1,000, 500, and so on. Again, it's just stuff you've got to know. So here we go. Have a think about these. So how would you do the first one? So this one here. So that's flight level 60. How about this one? Flight level 100. Squawk 7,000. (150°). QNH 1000 and QNH 1013. Now here's one that you should have seen in the reading. When is the word hectopascals used following a pressure setting? And the answer is when the pressure setting is less than 1,000 hectopascals. And there's a reason for that, which is that the Americans use inches of mercury and we use hectopascals. And to avoid, and they sometimes have inches of mercury starting in a 9. I don't understand why either. But obviously somebody at some point has confused a pressure setting that was hectopascals with an inches of mercury setting and crashed and died. And there's an awful lot of rules in aviation written in blood, and this is one of them. Okay, standard words and phrases. Here are 3 that people get confused, so worth going and looking carefully at the definitions. Roger, Wilco, and A-firm. And they've also all got a sort of positive connotation, but Roger means I received your message. Wilco means will comply, I'm going to do what you've asked. And A-firm means yes. And then there are 2 words that for glider pilots are really very useful. And that's standby. That's I'm busy, I'll come back to you in a moment. And unable. So if somebody asks you to do something that is unwise or impractical, you can say unable. I don't think we use that a lot in this course, but it's right there. Okay, so if you can grab a pen and paper, and I'll give you a minute to write down the format for an initial call and the full message. That's all in the pre-reading. So have a go at that, or think it through, and we'll come to it in a moment. Okay, so here we go. Here's the initial call. And this is one of the examples of a piece of grammar or a framework that I was referring to earlier. You need to know the structure of these things but it's really the structure we want you to learn, and then you can stick the words that apply to you there and then when you're doing it in. So here it is. It's who we're calling, who we are, and what we want. So the who we're calling is the station's name. It might be, for example, Cambridge Approach. Who we are, that's our call sign. That might be Glider Golf Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta, and what we want. And that's a request of some sort, and very frequently that's the service that we want, and very frequently that's a basic service. You will hear people saying, oh, no service required, but actually that's pretty much the same as a basic service, and everybody knows what a basic service is, so ask for that. So it's going to go something like Cambridge Approach, Glider Golf Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta, request basic service. That is the initial call format. Or it could be request something else. They're going to say, Glider Golf Alpha Bravo Charlie Delta, pass your message. So that's their response. And I guess the reason for doing it like this, to have a little bit, the initial message, and then we're going to get to the big bit, which is all the stuff we want to tell them, is that if they're busy, they can tell you to stand by, and you're not blocking the channel with all the stuff we're about to talk about when they're not listening. So here's what we're going to respond when they say pass your message. And we're going to say who we are, where we're from and going to, where we are in 3 dimensions, any other bits and pieces, and if we want anything else, what we want. So again, there's a absolutely standard format, and who we are is generally our call sign and our type. So if I was flying the Mooney I had until very recently, it would be Golf Bravo Kilo Mike Alpha Mooney 201 would be that lot. But for our purposes as glider pilots, we're just going to say glider and our call sign. And the prefix glider is sufficient to cover the type. Air traffic controllers are not going to know nor care about the difference between a Ventus or an ASW 20 or whatever. Glider's fine. That's the big thing. We're flying a glider. Okay, where we're from and where we're going is the departure airfield and our destination airfield. In general, with gliding, it's the same place. And it's in there primarily to give the air trafficker some situational awareness. So if I'm flying the Mooney from Cambridge to Gloucester, say, the air trafficker has got a fairly good idea that I'm going to be on a more or less straight line between those two places. On the other hand, if I'm flying the Shark out of Gransden Lodge and going back to Gransden Lodge and I'm up somewhere near Sheffield, it gives the guy no useful information at all. So often glider pilots leave that out. But if you're going to do the test, you're going to need it. So we're going to have you practice with that. We'll put that in. And then the where we are bit is position level, by which we mean either altitude, height, and flight level, and then QNH if we're on altitude, or it would be QFE if we're on height. Flight level is doesn't need you to say what the pressure setting is because it's a standard. And then anything else. So generally what we recommend is say where your next turn point is in words that they will understand. So that's not an esoteric BGA turn point. It's something big that it's close to. And then if we've got some other requests, we can add it here. Okay, so we will come to that in detail. A few common questions that we picked up on the way. How do you address a launch point at a small club? And generally, actually, the answer is launch point. So clubs, if you look at managing flying risks, there's some stuff about call signs for clubs. And clubs ought not to use the call sign radio. because as you will have discovered in the pre-reading, radio implies, so Cywell radio or Shoreham radio or something like that. Radio implies that they're providing an air-ground communication service, which almost no glider clubs do. And that has some things that go with it, like the requirement to have a certificate of competence to speak on the radio if you're providing that service, and the inability of any glider pilot who doesn't hold a FRTOL to talk to them legally. So glider clubs don't want to provide an air-ground communication service, and they oughtn't call themselves whatever radio. So Managing Flying Risk says that if it's a fixed radio, it's gliding club base, so Granston Lodge base. If it's a mobile at a launch point, it will be launch point or mobile or winch or whatever it is. So there's some words that we can use. Okay, next common question. So do you need a FRTOL at, say, Husballs, which has got its own frequency? And the answer is no, you don't, because at Husballs, they're not providing a service. And a FRTOL is needed to talk to an air traffic service unit. So somebody who provides a service. Does a FRTOL meet the needs of a glider pilot rather than a power pilot? And the answer is yes. It gives us the ability to talk to air traffic service units, the ability to cross controlled airspace and things like that. Specific one about use of transponders. Should we include what we're squawking in the initial message? No, not really. You can if you want, but you don't have to. Okay, this is another of those things that we're going to do differently in real life from the test. You will, if you've done any cross-country and you've heard glider pilots talking to air traffic, in general, people use glider plus comp number. So my Shark, I'm glider 28. I use that rather than my G-Reg, which would be glider Golf Charlie Lima Oscar November, because it's much shorter and simpler. And in the previous glider, it would have been glider Hotel Uniform Juliet. It's not strictly ICAO compliant, though. So for the test, we're going and subsequently on this course, we're going to be teaching you this one, the glider GABCD. But in real life, you get out there and you'll probably do that one, and that's up to you. I will produce a list of things that we're doing differently in the course from real life. It's actually not very long, and I've probably covered half of it already. Okay, so what are you going to do in the breakout groups when we split you up? So there is a script which you can have a look at. On the website, there is a map that coaches can use of the sort of Cambridge Cranfield area. You're flying your glider from one of the clubs in that area, or your own club if you like, on a cross country. You can pick a nearby airfield you can pass, decide on a height position you might make a call to get a basic service. The student's going to act as the glider pilot, the coach is air traffic. The glider pilot makes an initial call. The coach says, call sign, pass your message. The glider pilot makes the full call, and you can extend it a little bit if you want beyond that. You can take it in turns. You've got a script there which you can use as a template if you want, but try and do without it. By the next session, by next week, be good at this. This is the basic building block of everything we're going to do subsequently. And this is an easy breakout session compared with subsequent ones. I've mentioned the map. So there we go. Any questions? You can send them now via chat, or you can email them afterwards. For next time, review the course materials for part 2. Be really good at those calls and go through the pre-reading again. It's sort of it's the basic that you're going to have to work on. Right, I'm going to stop sharing and ask Chula whether we've got any questions.
Okay, and just before I come to the questions, just some coachy things. So it's coaches, thank you for putting a star in front of your name. If you didn't, and I've now missed you, too late. So I'm Sorry about that. Steve Haley, I haven't assigned you a room because you said you're going part way through. Please stay as long as you can. And I think there's at least one experienced pilot on this chat who's volunteered to be a coach. Just sign up with Paul afterwards so we can incorporate you fully on future weeks. And remember, you don't have to be here every week. So don't feel you're signing up for something you can't commit to. There haven't been too many questions on the chat, Paul. Some of them are repetitions, which is fine. So you don't need to say your glider type. You do not need to say your glider type. And the RT test is not by Zoom. Somebody was, forgive me, I couldn't quite process it, about not being able to chat in the rooms. If there's something you think needs to be shared, that person, sorry, I can't see your name, please unmute and say now if it's important. Otherwise, we'll live with it. And I'll just read through silently the other questions. Yes, you should be able to share screens in private rooms. That's been enabled by Paul. You don't know where the script is, it's in the chat. Paul might repost it now if you came late.
Andrew Sinclair has asked me, where's the map again, please, Paul? And it's, if you go to the course materials section of the website under part 1, there's a map. If you open it in a new tab, you'll be able to scale it.
What is it? Here's a question. I'm not sure. Sorry, I've just lost the name, but here it is. Teddy Long says, what does the word discrete mean? I.e., e.g., a discrete frequency or discrete transponder code?
Okay, I'll pick that one up. So by discrete on frequency, I mean an airfield with its own frequency. So as opposed to a shared frequency, such as one of the BGA common gliding field frequencies, so which I can't remember offhand. But so there are two frequencies that lots of gliding clubs share, but for example, the bigger clubs tend to have their own. So that's what I mean by discrete. And a discrete transponder code means not one of the conspicuity codes that's shared by lots of people. We'll come to that in more detail.
Thanks. And Tim's asked, who can provide a basic service? So from AFIS upwards, and if you don't know what that means yet, it'll be apparent in your reading. So for a station with a call sign information or air traffic control, they can provide a basic service. Air ground, I don't believe can.
No, it can't.
That's the end of the questions that are on the chat.
Okay, I had do you really pronounce Townsend without the H? And the answer is yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.